Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha. Before we get started, please feel free to minimize this video, get up and move around, maybe go to the kitchen and get yourself a snack while it's playing. I will have gameplay footage running, but for this particular video I won't be making use of any meaningful visual aids. I know this is a slight departure from my normal content, but with this particular discussion, any visual aids have been already seen by most people and are tertiary to the conversation in general. That said, it seems that due to an article posted by Kotaku that coincided with the latest patch, Mass Effect Andromeda is back in the news. In the article written by Jason Schreier, he outlines in great length and detail a very large amount of information behind Mass Effect Andromeda's 5-year development. Now, of course, we have all seen the end result of the outcome of the travesty that was the game's development. With more bugs and glitches than one could ever imagine, the game has been assaulted on all fronts for a variety of reasons. The fact that the primary studio that developed the original trilogy was basically not involved in any meaningful way stuck out as a sore thumb in the minds of many. In addition, there has been numerous reports of the person being mainly responsible for the story of Mass Effect Andromeda being the same woman that claimed she was raped in Grand Theft Auto V's online multiplayer. And of course, the controversy surrounding Manpower Hare's racism is widely known and oft lamented amongst fans. It seems there was no shortage of issues or blame to go around, and even laying all of that aside, it was clear to anyone and everyone that this was not the same level or standard of game that many have come to expect when they think of Mass Effect. Most of it is due to extremely legitimate issues, and some of it could be touted as rose-colored nostalgia. Either way, the expectations being placed on the game and the development team were extremely high, and it seems they were unable to live up to those expectations. But what happened? How did Mass Effect Andromeda come out in such a deplorable state, with facial animations being virtually non-existent or laughable when they were actually present? A vast amount of bugs, and a story that, when it wasn't busy being bland in the extreme, had more logical inconsistencies and plot holes than Star Trek Beyond. Well, it seems that Mass Effect Andromeda suffered from a near-perfect storm of issues. The main difficulty I'm seeing, though, from an outside perspective, is one of general mismanagement and no meaningful leadership of the project as a whole, as well as an overall lack of manpower. The article discusses a great deal of issues that the game encountered even in its earliest days while they were considering what engine to use, while at the same time attempting to work in procedurally generated planets, amongst some other things. What this ended up causing was not exactly scope creep, but planning creep, where nothing was decided on for an exceptionally long period of time as they attempted to figure out the technology behind what they were attempting to do while they were in active development of the game itself. It's very much akin to a mechanic going ahead with a head gasket replacement when he knows he's missing multiple tools to do it. He will try and figure out some way to keep going regardless, but at some point, he's going to reach a dead end. This very thing happened multiple times through the course of the 5 years that were spent on the game. Couple that with staffing changes and an apparent perception of bitterness and inter-office hostility over the Edmonton studio. In addition to that, it was decided that the team would switch from the Unreal Engine that was used in previous Mass Effect games to Frostbite, which had its own set of problems, which included the fact that Frostbite had no framework out of the box for animations, and the maximum allowed map size was not nearly large enough for what they were intending to use it for. And if all of that wasn't enough, the animation team was understaffed through the entire project, and when people left, their positions weren't always refilled. Left with inadequate tools and what I personally feel as inadequate leadership to resolve issues, the game went into production when they still had not even bothered to figure out procedural generation. Indeed, it wasn't until the end of 2015 that they finally figured out that they were not going to be able to make the procedural generation work and had decided to perform a massive rescope of the game. They then shifted from hundreds of procedurally generated planets to 30 crafted planets, and then from 30 to 7. In addition to this, the previous Mass Effect titles included efforts from all 3 studios, while Mass Effect Andromeda was essentially designed solely by the Montreal team. This meant that a larger scope game was left to be handled by a much smaller workforce. And what we were left with after the titanic wave of issues that the game faced was what equated to an 18-month true development cycle by a woefully understaffed and undermanaged team. Small wonder the game was released in the state that it was. 18 months would have still been considered rushed for a AAA title over a decade ago. Now, with graphics and engines being infinitely more complex, 18 months is nowhere near what is needed for a game of that size and scope. And we can all see the result of those decisions and actions. The Montreal team is left cleaning up the mess and patching a game that should never have been rushed out the door in such a state to begin with. The fact that they started production without getting all of their tools in place meant that the game was headed for a brick wall with no one at the management level pumping the brakes. Procedural generation should have been abandoned in the planning phase of the game, not 3 years into development, as they had no tools or real idea on how to even implement it. Also, no clear plan was laid out for even integrating animations, and the general lack of manpower speaks to a severe lack of ability at the management level. And now, because of all of this, Mass Effect as a franchise has basically been placed on hold by BioWare, which might very well indicate that the deplorable state of release for Mass Effect Andromeda could be the death knell for the franchise. At the very least, I would expect no more forward progression on the Mass Effect franchise until Project Dylan has been released and the larger and more experienced Edmonton team can take the reins of Mass Effect again. At this point, that is most likely the only way that BioWare will be able to salvage the Mass Effect IP. After such high hopes and large expectations that were placed on Andromeda, it would take nothing less than a cultural shift at BioWare to a more cooperative work environment that resembles the BioWare of old in order to breathe life and excitement back into the Mass Effect universe. But don't feel as if this has to be a one-sided conversation. Please feel free to let me and others know your thoughts down in the comments. Also, please help support my channel by liking it and sharing this video, and if you're new here, then please don't forget to hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Links to my Patreon, Steam curation page, contact email, and social medias are in the description below. Please feel free to make use of them if you would like. And thank you so much for watching. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.